Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here in Washington, D.C. at the AUVSI's Washington Conference, and we're here to talk to Wayne McAuliffe, who is the Business Development Director at Martin UAV, California-based company, originally California technology. Talk to us, Wayne, and I should say you're a retired commander in the United States Navy who flew the legendary H-3 helicopter, one of the finest naval helicopters, one of the finest helicopters ever. Talk to us a little bit about VBAT, the technology, and the applications. We heard from Ellen Lord, the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, the importance of having American products in this space. Obviously, a lot of Chinese competition coming into the market at all variety and sizes. Talk to us a little bit about the VBAT, what's unique about it, and where you think it gives you an edge in this marketplace.
Sure, absolutely. So VBAT is a vertical takeoff and landing fixed-wing UAV. So it takes off straight up, transitions onto the wing, flies like a fixed-wing airplane for up to 8 hours, comes back, transitions back into a hover and lands vertically. So what's unique there is we don't need any launch equipment, we don't need any recovery equipment. It also is the only vertical takeoff and landing airplane that does a level transition onto the wing and a level transition back into the hover. So it's pretty unique. If you look back in some recent programs, the Turn program was one of those that was supposed to do this, but VBAT's really the only one that's pulled it off. All of that is our intellectual property. It's all patented, and it is truly unique. There's nobody else in the world that can do it.
And obviously, right, I mean, that's one of the holy grails. We saw that with, for example, V-22 takeoff land vertically. Full disclosure, Bell is one of our sponsors.
And our neighbor.
And your neighbor, exactly, in sunny Texas. Talk to us a little bit about, there is this focus and this concern about getting a trusted marketplace started to get American investment into some of these American companies. Talk to us about how much of what you do is American, because there's a big debate about, okay, well, some guys can do the do the aerostructure, for example, but engines and other components tend to be Chinese, right? If 70% of the content is Chinese, it is debatable how American the thing is ultimately. How do you guys do it? What's the part content American? And how do you and can you remain competitive without government investment, given that cost of labor and technology and products is higher in the United States than it is in Asia, for example?
Sure. So, for example, all the composites is here. We do that ourselves. We've outsourced a couple of things, but to another local Texas company. The avionics is all U.S. Our autopilot is built by us. So the only part of the airplane that we're still looking overseas for is the engine. So it's made by Herth in Germany. Still a good engine, still a good ally. Nothing we use comes from China. All of our software is our own, or if it's not ours, it's U.S. sourced. So not particularly fussed about that.
And talk to us about the market. You guys are in commercial markets, also government, border. Who have you got under your belt as customers at this point, and what's the growth strategy, say, over the next 5 years?
Sure. So I don't know if you knew, but we recently were selected by the Army as part of the Future Tactical UAS program, so one of 4 now after the protest. So that's our principal focus, certainly for the next few months. But in the meantime, we've already got a contract with the Marine Corps through Naval Air Systems Command, where we're doing a little bit of development to bring the airplane around to what the Marine Corps might want. We obviously built it and started it as a commercial company. It's all self-invested, self-funded up until now. So we were aimed at, frankly, the power lines and pipelines and railways. You can go out and do survey work in the commercial world. We grew the airplane a little too much. We're over the 55-pound limit for the FAA, so we're working through that system now with the FAA. I've got 2 now that are FAA experimental aircraft certified, and I can fly in a couple of places. So we're going to try to extend that. I had some conversations with the Department of Transportation about maybe some of their pipeline work. So that is probably the first part we'll get into in the commercial world. So the real focus there is the airplane is such a small form factor. I can put in an airplane, a GCS, a data link, parts, spares, fuel, and a crew in an F-150 and drive out, park in a pipeline, and do all the survey work. I can stand in the day.
And I think that folks would be saddened to hear that 50 pilots a year actually die on, according to some statistics, doing whether it's power line survey work in either fixed wing or in helicopters. Talk to us about the smaller version of the aircraft, right? Because VBAT that you've got and is being operationalized right now is the 9-foot tall one. As you said, it's a little bit heavy at 80. It's 30 pounds above the weight limit currently. Talk to us about the other version of the VBAT.
What you see behind me is an electric VBAT, the EVBAT. It's about 25 pounds, and we built this really not just as an exercise in scaling so that we could see if the large VBAT could scale down, but it was also a way to get under the weight limit so that we could actually fly the airplane in the national airspace without having to go through too much effort. And that little airplane flies the same autopilot as the big airplane. It flies from the same ground station as the big airplane. And it's got the same flight controls, command loops, all the same equipment, except for payloads, fits in that. So we actually did the last of our development work in that small airplane, then scaled it up to the big one. We've been focused on that for the last couple of years, but now that that's approaching production, this airplane now has a market of its own. It's nothing quite like a small 25-pound airplane that you can backpack around, launch from behind walls or behind buildings. So we think there's going to be a market for that too.
And roughly how much endurance do you have? Because the big one is 8 hours of endurance and does about 90 knots. Talk to us about Junior.
Sure. Yeah, the EVBAT right now, the endurance is the question. So we're looking at a couple of different battery technologies, capacitor technologies to keep the electric motor, get the electric motor out to a couple of hours. Now that's going to be the real long pole in the tent. We've also looked at a couple of different combinations of electric and internal combustion, small, very small motors that might be able to do the same thing. So we're right at that point. We know what the airplane looks like. We know what the ground control station is. We know what the autopilot is. It's getting that last bit of the motor done that'll turn that into a product.
Let's talk a little bit about growth. You guys want to grow internationally. Jeff Bloom, formerly of Under Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for International Programs, is on your team to try to help you with that. Can you guys do this without any sort of U.S. government subsidization at the end of the day? I mean, that's the concern. That's what the trusted marketplace is about, to make sure that there's investment capital out there that is clean from a national security perspective, that doesn't have an ability for Chinese investors to gain access to American proprietary technologies. Are you guys able to be competitive as an American company in this market without any form of subsidization at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. We got here all on our own, so I don't see any reason we can't go further on our own. So our owner is a guy named Reuben Martin. Reuben's a more than generous investor. He's put a considerable amount of his personal money into getting us to where we are today without any government support. So we're at the point now where we think we're going to legitimately get government contracts for future tactical UAS, for the Marine Corps, and I think the company's just going to grow on its own organically. We're not going to need that kind of investment to get to a larger scale. And we already can produce 2 airplanes a month, and it's easy to see where we could get to more. And frankly, we're getting the kind of interest from U.S. banks and U.S. investors that can take us to where we want to go.
And where is that? Say in 5 years, where do you guys want to be?
Well, we don't really want to buy Lockheed Martin, but we're thinking about it.
Wayne McAuliffe, thanks very much, sir. Absolute pleasure, and fair winds following seas on the program.
Thanks, Vago. Appreciate it.